10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Good luck, studio.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Paul Chandler, the Shy Yeti. He's not that shy.
Oh, it's the Shy Life Podcast. Yeah!
All I wanted was a pie, and then I hatched out of an egg.
Okay, bring the mic over. He's ready to record.
It's the quiet ones you've got to watch, you know.
Is it metaphorical? Is it deep? Is it deep?
Boy, he's not all that shy is right. 300.
Blimey, Governor, it's the Shy Life Podcast.
Hello, campers. How are you?
Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Shy Life Podcast with me, Paul the Shy Yeti. How are you doing? I'm all right. I've got a special guest here. It's Martin Holmes. How are you doing, Martin?
Yes, I've always been special. Yes, hello. They tell me I'm special.
Oh, well, you are.
You are
Indeed
special.
You are.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, not in that way, I suspect.
Well, this is sort of the end of an era, although it's not the end of our recording. But it
Closing the circle.
Yes,
Closing your circle, as it were.
yes, yeah. We're talking about the music of 1974, which then will join up the dots because we've already done 75. But for those of you who
But that's with me, you swine.
no, not with you. Well, maybe in many years' time we'll end up doing it again.
No. That's fine.
But,
I understand the process. You know.
Well, I don't. We did it backwards, forwards, anyway, and that wasn't even the recording. But yes, we should run the theme tune. When we come back, we'll get talking about 1974. Run that theme music.
Darling, it's the Shy Life Podcast.
Yeah, but it's a positive thing. The High Life, the Shy Life.
You won't find a cast of characters like this everywhere.
Hello, Paul.
I'll go anywhere for a potato.
This particular episode of The Shy Life is a little more abstract than usual. Okay, it looks like the hairy guy is ready to record. 3, 2, 1.
Go Shy Yeti.
Oh, has he ever found out my secret? I think he has.
If you thought that was bad, just listen to this.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait for it to begin.
It's the Shy Life Podcast.
He's positively glowing.
It's all gooey and meaty. Yum, 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 yum.
And we're back.
Yay!
So 1974, I was like 2 or 3 months old at the start of.
Well, there you go. To have old enough to have a record collection, I think you'll find.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yes, I was 2 months on the 10th of January. So,
Wow.
yeah. So I don't have many memories of 74. Although I think I was. It's one of those weird things where I guess probably I wasn't christened until 1974, and there were pictures of me with relatives who actually died later that same year. So like my
I have
granddad.
no memory of them. Really,
Yeah,
apart from the photo.
yeah, exactly. And in a way, I'm kind of glad I did meet them because they're, but I just don't remember it. But so I did actually meet my granddad. But
It is peculiar how little. I mean, because when you're that age, you obviously remember very little. I mean, obviously you're like a little sponge taking in how you learn all sorts of things. But I think it's odd the things you don't remember. I mean, probably we're all quite grateful we don't remember potty training and all that kind of. I mean, I know there are people who do, which is even more weird as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have a lot of memories in concrete terms much before 12. But of course, your relatives at that stage are saying to you, "Oh, you must, this moment and everything like that," and it's really important to them, and and they're trying to build memories and stuff, and they want to be sink in and everything like that. But in real terms, you genuinely don't. You grow up and those things tend to just sadly not be there. And it's
I met a lot more of my relatives than and to the point where I did remember them than my brother did, because my brother wasn't born until 82.
Yes,
and most of the ones that I did know had gone by the mid-'80s, so he won't remember many people at all. Yeah, it's weird. I think in the Shy Life podcast universe and all the other universes attached to it, I think Nick and Toppy have discussed how they do have really early memories, and Toppy recently released an episode of the Smellcast where he was talking about things he remembered from when he was in his crib.
Oh, crikey.
But then I'm more like you. I think that I don't really remember. I only remember bits before.
Too many distractions. That's what it is. But I think the beauty of what you have done across your career, for want of a better word, is that you've got all these your actual friendships and for want of a better word, playtime, if you like, is all on videotape, or yours to own forever on video. It's all there, and it's fascinating, really. I didn't have that kind of life at all. Fair enough. I've barely got any photos of me I used to be the one holding the camera, but there aren't masses of photographs of me in the world, but there are photographs of people, and sometimes I look at them, I've forgotten them, such and such, I'd forgotten I'd forgotten who they were. And I think the fact that you've got all that hours and hours of videotape of your life and the things you were doing is possibly one of the most beautiful things to have. Turning that on the other side, though, these people who basically want to photograph and video every single moment of their children's lives can be quite wearing for everybody else, I suppose.
That was one of the things I decided when I got a video camera, was that I wouldn't just do that. It would have to be something creative,
have purpose,
because I'd have to be telling a story, no matter how weird. Sutton Park wasn't the first thing that I did with my camera. Originally, it was just another sketch in a sketch show that I was, which outlasted that concept by many years.
Well, that's part of it, though, isn't it? It's having that to fall back on. It's just quite a beautiful thing, really.
When I wasn't making the films in the noughties, I was doing a lot of writing until I started doing the podcast. Well, I suppose I did do my poetry videos in the early 10s. So there is a sort of gap where we perhaps doing mixed films.
It's weird, really, because we did have a friend who, for various reasons, is no longer with us, and that's really odd seeing them on videotape. Now it feels really odd. People said it at the time, shortly after what happened, but it's still now, because I don't know about the way that the brain imprints stuff, but I think sometimes when somebody's no longer there, you imprint the absence. So you get used to the absence. That's how your brain copes with the loss. And then suddenly to see them there, sort of large and large, it can be quite disconcerting, because you can see photographs, and photographs are one thing, but actually have, the voice, the person, the presence. It can be quite disconcerting, I find. Yeah. Or maybe that's just me.
We have people who are in Sutton Park who we don't know anymore, and play quite a big part in Sutton Park. So it's kind of weird here. They're still around somewhere, but they've evaded social media and have been untraceable. So.
Yes. But then again, you look at the other side of that, of course, when you watch pop videos or you watch films or you watch television, all the cast are doing and giving their all. And quite a lot of the television I watch, because it's so very old, none of the cast are around anymore. So you are seeing ghosts in the celluloid sense. And I think it's you're seeing people's creativity, but it's still sometimes I struggle with the idea of how the world worked for that to happen, because it's still difficult to imagine the world before you were here in many ways.
Oh, it didn't exist. You're an anomaly.
Oh, precisely. This is it. Well, whatever I was doing for the first 10 years of my life didn't really happen, apparently.
It's just I've managed to work a backstory for your character.
I always thought I was a figment. I just didn't think anybody had that dark a figment imagination.
Well, I shall tell you some of the things that happened in 1974 in music.
Waterloo, I was defeated, you won the war. That probably happened then.
Yeah, that did. That's a little bit later, but Kiss released their first album. Kiss released they released their first album in February 1974. I have it as well somewhere.
I thought Kiss were earlier than that. That's very odd. I thought they were late 60s, a bit sort of parallel with Led Zeppelin and all that, but of course that wouldn't make sense, would it?
They might have existed in different forms, but not as kids. There's yes, as you say, in April, ABBA won Eurovision Song Contest with Waterloo.
Waterloo.
I could tell you that Captain and Tino got married, but I don't think everybody would be like, who's that? Or maybe not.
Well, there's a lot of captains about.
In May, Led Zeppelin announces their new record label, Swan Song Records.
Ah, right. That has the air of doom about it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because I think we said in the last one, How's the Holy been out, hadn't it, in '73? So what would they have brought out under their new record label?
Oh, there's a sad one here. July 29th, Mama Cass died in age 32 in a Mayfair flat in London, having just performed 2 sold-out concerts at the London Palladium.
Crikey.
What else have we got? There's so much on this list. We've jumped to November. John Lennon joins Elton John on stage at Madison Square Garden for 3 songs. And in December, Mick Taylor leaves the Rolling Stones after 6 years.
Right.
Oh, and December 31st, Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks join Fleetwood Mac.
Wow. Well, that's an interesting combination.
Bands that disbanded that year include the Moody Blues, but they reformed in 1977. The Stooges, who reformed in 2003.
Wow. What, really?
And King Crimson, who reformed in 1981. Wow. So none of them didn't last.
So, well, the Stooges specifically are a band I've not heard of. Did anybody notice that they reformed?
The Stooges are the band that Iggy Pop comes from.
Ah, right. So they did. I think that they were. I think we see the advantage here of you reading all those pop star biographies.
Well, I do have at least one Stooges album. Well, I'm not a massive pop fan, but I think, to be fair, they were probably a lot bigger in the States than they were in the UK at the time, although I can't vouch for that, seeing as I was only 2 months old.
Well, you get told a lot of things, don't you? And you also, I mean, the thing is, if you actually do your researches, I mean, I know quite a lot about sort of 1950s stuff. I wasn't around then, so I think it's perfectly reasonable.
That's the thing. I'm sure it was like that when I was a kid, that people my age were interested in stuff that was earlier than the year that they were in.
Yes,
but I was just always interested in the 60s, in the 80s, because I think that's partly from, finding out that Doctor Who had existed before I was watching it, and also the sort of the Beatles and the swinging 60s and all the weird fashions, and there's a lot to explore. It seemed quite exciting, and I probably wasn't wasn't that aware of the 80s when I was in it, if you know what I mean. Not when I was sort of 10, 11, 12 sort of thing.
Well, this thing that always gets me about it, because when I was 10, 11, 12, we used to talk in hushed tones because of the various books I bought about old TV. But something like you say about Doctor Who at that age, the earliest episode would have been 10 years old, and it felt like ancient history. It felt like another era, I mean, a generation before. It's like these things would be impossible to see, and obviously since then we've had DVDs and videos and all that kind of thing. But they seemed like they were ancient. But I kind of think about it now, and it's like, well, that's the beginning of the Matt Smith era from now, and that doesn't feel like ancient history. That feels like it happened about 3 weeks ago. It's really peculiar, that sort of time compression thing or time expansion thing that you get at various eras. I still I had conversations with people who, even 10, 15 years ago, and you'd say to them, you talk about something like Cary Grant, and they'd go, who? And you think, how can you not know about Cary Grant? But it was such ancient history to them, and it was so far before they were born, and they didn't watch black and white films and all that. And it does fascinate you, really, how the brain processes time.
I was speaking to a friend who's about 17, 18 years younger than me, and I mentioned Woody Allen to him. I was glad that he didn't really know anything about the scandalous side. He just sort of heard that, knew had never seen any of his films. So I was able to talk to him about, the films rather than
sort of Manhattan and Broadway Danny Rose and Annie Hall, all that stuff. But you see, the fascinating thing about that is, for some generations, the only thing they know is the scandal, because that's the only thing that anybody talks about in certain terms of certain television characters who have been disgraced. The only thing they know about them is the disgrace. They
often only know the one side, particularly with Woody.
Yes,
he never gets very good hearing, but you never hear people talking about Mia Farrow and all the stuff that side of the story.
Indeed. But see, there is another sort of strange and peculiar thing, is that when it comes to things like music, I am always horrified to find out that a tune that I think is a modern tune is 30 years old. I've said this before. I know I've said it before. I've probably said it before on your show, but I still think Oasis and Blur are modern new bands, and I actually have very little knowledge of much after in the last 20 years because I don't listen to music radio anymore. But what gets me is I think of those as modern bands, and now you realise that they're 25. It's all 25 years ago, and it just messes with my head that this stuff that I think, I hear a tune on the radio as, it's one of these modern numbers, and it's a quarter of a century old.
This is the trouble with old gold sort of radio stations. You really need to do different levels because, if my parents
older.
Yeah, my parents turned on an old gold station, and it's got 80 stuff. They're like, that's not their era of. They won't.
The Jam.
Yeah, I mean, the Sex Pistols are old gold, aren't they? And my parents aren't going to be happy listening to the Sex Pistols.
Well, they do adverts now, and they've become respectable. So the ones that survived. So it is weird. It is very weird. You live long enough, everybody becomes respectable.
Anyway,
or not, as the case may be.
Anyway, Dealey is now joined us. He's been very respectful, but he's here. But I think I can still. He's still allowing me to use the internet, so I can give the details that we need for this episode. So the first number one of 1974 in the UK is the New Seekers featuring Lynn Paul. You Won't Find Another Fool Like Me.
You won't find another fool like me. Now, interesting. What was Lynn? I always thought Lynn Paul was in. Had she become the featured name then, or was she tacked onto it?
I'm not sure.
Because I always felt, is it just because her name was the one that became associated with it later, or she became more famous than the rest? It's just that I hadn't at the time I hadn't been aware that they were featuring anybody. They were just the New Seekers.
Yeah, I'm not.
Not that I would have been that aware of that sort of thing, but it does interest me.
The Wikipedia site is too
vague.
Isn't giving me.
Never mind. Well, maybe listeners will write in and tell us all about the career of Lynn Paul and how she became the most celebrated of the New Seekers.
I don't think she was.
Sorry, a bit of DPA mode there. Apologise.
Doesn't look like she was necessarily there as long as some of the people either. She was there from about 71 to 74.
Right.
And their first single came out in 69, so we're a little way through it. They'd already had.
It's on from the Fizzy Barren Water, aren't we?
Never Ending Song of Love was number 2. I'd Like to Teach the World to Sing number 1. Beg, Steal or Borrow number 2. Circles number 4. They'd even done a medley of Pinball Wizard.
Wow.
Actually,
that's probably worth a list.
Yeah, that was 73. That wasn't that.
You see, I only really ask these difficult questions just to see how good your research is for these shows.
Yeah, I don't know why. There seems to be that's rather odd. They seem so in in 73 they released quite a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 singles. Actually, they didn't seem to do that well with their singles in 73.
No.
So not quite sure what was going.
Became
on in 73, but in
suddenly it's their old.
In 74, they're having sort of
back a resurgence. What's this thing about new? How do you feel about the word new in things? Because obviously everything that's new is once it's 50 years old, it seems a bit silly to be calling it new, really, doesn't it? I always think the new Avengers is now 47 years old, and I think it's not that new, mate. It's not that new. Perhaps they should retitle them after 5 years and just say the later Avengers.
They could do it like new Who and new.
Well, yeah, it's just weird, isn't it? It's it's like New Coke is now 40 years old.
The Adventures of the Avengers. That would be a bit.
The next generation, apart from the guy who was in the previous generation. Anyway, sorry, it's just
the New Seekers did have another top 10 hit in '74. They have "I Get a Little Sentimental Over You" got to number 5.
No, that's funny. That has the air of Saturday night television about it. I can feel a coziness coming on. I can feel them guest starring on the Val Doonican show or something with that.
The '74 is their last top 10 year.
They're here tonight.
Well, I wonder if they split. They were intending to. They're one of those bands that split up and then sort of.
See, I'm always a because there are these bands from that sort of era, and then you suddenly hear about the fact that Shawaddy Waddy is still going. I mean, they've changed their broom handles and their brush heads, 64 times in the meantime, but Shawaddy Waddy still ticking along, turning up.
They have an album in '74 which doesn't have any hits on it, called Farewell Album, and then in '76 they have an album called Together Again. They're not going to take long, did it?
They're telling their story through the titles at the very least. There we are.
They did have a
bye, we're back.
They did have a number 21 hit in '78 with Anthem.
All right.
I'm not aware of.
Still with the original lineup. That's
well.
Bad.
I'm not sure what happened after '74. I won't.
Well, they probably went off to have tedious things like families and what have you. You know what it's like.
But they never looked exactly teenage.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Seekers.
Yeah. Well, our next number. I mean, that You Won't Find Another Fool Like Me was number 1 for 1 week, and.
Right. It's going to take us all day to get through this, isn't it? That's right.
And our next number 1 was a famous one for 4 weeks. It was Mud with Tiger Feet.
Tiger Feet. I love Tiger Feet. As you know, years later, I bought one of these LPs of Glam. And the one of the reasons I bought it was like the best of glam, and one of the reasons was because Tiger Feet was. I used to adore whenever they used to put the Alan Freeman used to do the radio sort of top 10s on a Sunday afternoon. I think it was when I was a student. And Tiger Feet. There was a period of the year when every week Tiger Feet would be on that show for some reason, and it's just it's such an upbeat. So the only song I can think of that actually used to cheer me up as well is "Walking on Sunshine" by Katrina and the Waves later. Same kind of feel to it. It just cheers me up to hear it.
It was their second, not their second single, but it's their second big hit. Their previous song was "Dynamite" in '73.
You mean looking like dynamite? All right. Yeah, I love Mud. Funny enough, the other thing about Mud is that I remember them being on a jukebox when we went on a school trip. This sounds terribly posh. It wasn't a posh school, but for some reason we went to Switzerland for a week, and I remember the hotel we stayed in had Mud on the jukebox, and it's one of the very few vivid memories I have of that trip. But yes, yeah, Mud.
They had 4 top 10 hits in '74. I'll tell you about another 2 of them. The Cat Crept In, number 2, Rocket, number 6, and there may or may not be another success.
They did have a Christmas song, didn't they?
Yes, I'm not talking about that yet.
Okay. I'll be back later. Spoiler alert.
74, 75, they had The Secrets You Keep. Oh boy, that was another number 1. I don't know if I can tell you about '75 number 1, seeing as that episode came out 18 months ago.
But really, Oh Boy, for example, for me, that was probably what I thought. I just thought it was one of their songs. It's one of those weird ones where you discover later that it was a cover.
Yeah.
And there's a whole world of music where you discover later it was a cover. But sometimes, I think we've touched on this before, the original version that you hear is the one you always think is the original version, especially if you like it. It's just very peculiar.
They had 3 more top 10 hits in '75, which I I've never heard of. Moonshine Sally, number 10. La La Lucy, number 10. And Show Me You're a Woman, number 8.
Show me you're a woman, I'll show you that I'm a man. I always thought it was a bit dubious. That's behind the bike sheds music, isn't it?
Actually, I've been unfair. I scrolled down, and actually, they had a number 12 hit and a number 7 hit in 1976. Lean on Me was their last top 10 hit in 76.
Of course, Les Gray had gone off to be the Green Cross Code man for a while, hadn't he?
So that's mad. You'll be pleased with the next number 1 for 2 weeks. Well, I'm pleased too. It's Suzi Quatro with Devil Gate Drive.
Devil Gate Drive. Now, I think you've hit on my absolute lodestone. I think we're finishing on a real high for the stuff I used to listen to and where I started to be actually perceiving music. Yeah. Oh.
Because when I was editing the 1973 episode, it reminded me that I had Suzi Quatro's autobiography on my phone. So I'm reading all about her. It's very interesting. It's very good. The next number 1 for 1 week is Alvin Stardust with Jealous Mind.
Oh, right. Again, I know we had an Alvin Stardust album. I know my sister. Again, most of the music I listened to at that era was because my sister bought it. But she was at the age then. She would have been about, where are we, 74? She'd have been about just 19, 20 years old. So that's sort of peak record buying sort of years, I suppose. So, yeah, I was quite aware of it. And, of course, she would have watched Top of the Pops, so I would have watched Top of the Pops because my big sister was watching Top of the Pops, and Mum and Dad probably went off and said, "Oh, what's this racket?" and went away. But, yeah, no, it's...
had some minor hits in the 60s. The Shane Fenton and the Fentons.
Right, yes.
The highest one got to number 19.
And was married to Lisa Goddard for a while, I believe.
Yeah. This is the second... His previous single, It was
a bit weird with that Sinister Glove. You know, He was doing the William Hartnell, get your hand in the shot, make it interesting, and he would do a lot of stuff with a glove. I remember, it's wonderful glove.
He actually, I think he's a name that you kind of do associate with this period. His success wasn't.
I found another one who went on to do Green Cross Code adverts.
Because his previous single was My Cuckoo in 73, number 2. Then the follow-up to Jealous Mind was Red Dress, number 7. And then he had another one in 74 called You, number 6. And then that was it for top 10 hits. So he wasn't like that as successful, but he's a weird one because I remember when I was watching the 80s Top of the Pops, he had a big hit in 81 with Pretend. In fact, possibly his third biggest hit got to number 4.
I have vague recollections that he did a couple of musicals. And so it might have been that it was like soundtrack album, But if you tell me that Dave Prowse was also had a top 10, and that's why he became Green Cross Crew, unless he was in the Wurzels, of course.
And then he had 2 number 7 hits in 1984, which seemed very late for Alvin Stardust, with I Feel Like Buddy Holly and I Won't Run Away.
Again, possibly to do with West End shows, perhaps. I don't know.
Well, I Feel Like Buddy Holly was written by Mike Batt, so
he did quite a lot of didn't he? Didn't he present a Christian one? Was it him and Bernie? Was it Bernie Flint? I don't know. I always felt there was a bit of Christian rock in Alvin Stardust's later career, but I may be wrong about that. But sadly, no longer with us. He
passed away in 2014, age 72.
No, he wasn't in Hollyoaks, was he?
I wouldn't put it. I mean, a lot of people have been in Hollyoaks.
Again, it's just one of those strange and peculiar things that just popped into my head. But again, sometimes I get these things scrambled.
Yes, he was. In 1995, he joined the cast of Hollyoaks, playing the character Greg Anderson from October 95 to July 96. That's well remembered. Hollyoaks is one of those shows that I've never watched, but I always felt that I probably would be a massive fan if I had. When you hear these things about a soap, do you commit yourself to another show?
Well, there's a lot of them, isn't there? It is weird. I've been watching the what we were watching programs, and they keep showing clips of EastEnders, and I keep thinking, I think that was the last time I watched it. Anyway, there we go.
So our next number 1 is Paper Lace. Billy Don't Get Here
Yeah.
Era. That was for 3 weeks.
Funny, I don't know why my mind makes a connection with Paper Lace and Baron Knights, and I don't know why. It's just in my head. It just seems to connect in my brain. That, but I'm probably wrong about that as well. Paper Lace, yes. So what was the song again? Billy, Don't Be a Hero.
Don't Be a Hero.
I think, yeah, I do remember that. It's funny because that's also about the time of Doctor Hook as well. And again, I suspect these were just things that were on my sister's record turntable.
They only really had one other big hit. That was The Night Chicago Died the same year.
Yes, The Night Chicago Died. Yes, again, problem is that a lot of this stuff I associate with two things, really. It's kind of like Seaside Special, but like holiday camp kind of programs, and sort of. But those Saturday night entertainments, and these people would turn up, or they'd be a guest on Crackerjack, or Lulu, or something like that, and they would, or the Scylla's shows. These bands would turn up and do their hit. So I kind of find it all a little bit cheesy. They all seem to wear suits and flares and fluffy, not fluffy, what they call ruffled shirts. And it's just the image in my head is they're all like on some massive cruise ship somewhere.
Most probably. Apologies if Dealey's making a lot of noise. He's a big Paper Lace fan, I think.
Well, I apologise, obviously, for immediately for all the things I've said. I didn't realise that Dealey was the head of the Paper Lace fan club. I hadn't actually realised that.
They just say that they've never split up. They've says years active, 1967 to present. So goodness knows.
You see, that revelation to me is almost as big a revelation as Irene Handel being president of the Elvis Presley fan club. Dealey, the Paper Lace.
Obviously around along. I mean, their earliest single, which they didn't chart, is 71. So I wonder if they've been around, but they started off in working men's clubs, and apparently there are two different. Sounds a bit like Bucks Fizz. There's two different versions going around as well.
There's the Papers and the Laces.
So following that, we have it's a well-known song of the time. Seasons in the Sun by Terry Jacks.
We had joy, we had fun, we had seasons in the sun. My sister played that a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, crikey. I don't know why she played it a lot. I don't know whether she'd split up with somebody or something, but it got played an awful lot that year.
It's sort of jolly until you listen to the lyrics, and it's not.
Yeah. Well, there were rude lyrics to it as well, you think. I think, well, at least there were going around my school. We had joy, we had fun, we had starfish up our bum. I think that was the.
We only had one other
hit over here, and that was a cover of "If You Go Away," which loads of people like Shirley Bassey and people have done. He did have far more singles, well, particularly in Canada. Yeah, mainly in Canada, he was pretty big. He was, well, that said, some of those chart positions aren't exactly.
If you're struggling to find a follow-up single, go for a bit of a classic. I think that's the way it seems to go sometimes, isn't it?
Even Seasons in the Sun is a cover, so it's an English language adaptation of a 1961 song by Jacques Brel.
C'est français. As that might explain the Canadian thing.
Now, the next number one is a really famous one, although it didn't last in the charts as long as Seasons in the Sun. It is, of course, ABBA's Waterloo for 2 weeks.
Waterloo. They were a one-hit wonder, weren't they, ABBA?
One-hit wonder. Yeah.
Or was that the one that spelt it backwards? What were they called?
They were very nearly one-hit wonders, but because their next single was I Do, I Do, I Do, and that only got to 38 in the UK.
Oh, okay.
And then
the thing I love about Waterloo, again, it's an oblique connection, but there is this fabulous book collection of Clive James's TV reviews, and one I remember one hilarious. Well, I thought it was a hilarious night reading them out, and I couldn't get the words out because it was just so well written and so funny. But the actual TV review for that year's Eurovision Song Contest is called Waterloo, and that's why that's how it comes out that way. But But that's a piece of writing that's worth tracking down, listeners.
They managed to start clawing it back with SOS, got to number 6, and then Mamma Mia, and then was number 1, and then had lots of
There's a thing about familiarity, isn't there? I think once people actually get used to you being around, sometimes they will just buy your next one. You know, I think there is a certain amount of familiarity with certain bands or certain acts. It becomes oh yes, them again. Oh, but this is quite a good one. I like this one. And of course, it does everything in everything we've talked about over the years is kind of to do with airplay and what gets on the radio and what doesn't get on the radio, and people will, if it's got a good line, a good through line, they will play it.
That's the thing. They had a number of other singles released in other territories between Waterloo and I Do, which just didn't seem to get released.
Europop was a difficult sell to the British public in the 70s. You know, people would associate it with holidays. I imagine actually probably one of the things that fed the ABBA thing was the fact that their songs were being played in, you know, because people were starting to travel more into Europe in those days, and I think it might have had something to do with it.
I mean, that's the thing about, I think one of the reasons that the first ABBA Greatest Hits sold so well is that a lot of those songs, they may have been hits in other countries, but effectively a lot of that, the stuff that's on there weren't hits in the UK, so they were new material. And
that's how a lot of people discovered them. Anyway, they will be back, although not this year.
So following Waterloo, we have Sugar Baby Love by the Rubettes.
Yeah, man. The little white hats and the little white waistcoats. Oh, yeah.
That was for 4 weeks. That was a pretty good one. I'm just looking to see how they were doing.
The Rubettes were quite in order. They were the kind of act that got the painting on the cover of Lookin', you know, in the centre poster thing, which of course was always the mark of massive success. But
there are other big hits. They had a number 12 Tonight in '74 and Jukebox Jive number 3. That was their other biggest.
You do the Jukebox Jive just like we did in 1955 or 65 or whichever one rhymes better.
I Can Do It in '75, got to number 7. They had some other ones.
Move from the head right down to my blue suede shoes. Yeah. I don't remember that one at all.
There were a few that didn't do quite so well, but they had a number 10 in 1977 with Baby I Know.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm starting to again think I'm rather more familiar with the Rubettes than I really would like to be. But of course, they would have been, again, like I say, the acts that turned up on the children's shows we watched. You know,
I think they kind of did better. They almost did better in Belgium, Germany, Netherlands. They had more top 10 hits than they did in the UK.
Well, you know, you wear a flat cap and you're going to go down well in any country, really, aren't you? You know.
Following that, we have for 1 week Ray Stevens, The Streak.
The Streak. Oh yes, they called it The Streak. Boogity boogity. Yes, the fastest thing on 2 feet. Yes.
It's about a streaker.
I'm afraid so. It was streaking was a big thing in that era at sports events. It seems basically, although it seems at that time it was before, because I mean, let's face it, was it Erica? What was her name? Erica, somebody or other. Basically, by streaking naked, got herself a lot of page 3s and what have you from the Sun and what have you. So. But at that stage, it was. I don't know if you remember that famous photograph of the man leaping over the bales at one of the Test matches, streaking. It was a very weird thing. Hot summers, you see, hot summers and too much beer. I can't imagine why anybody would want to do it, but hey, what the hell? I don't know.
He had 2 other top 10 hits at that point. Everything is Beautiful in '70. Got to number 6. And then Bridget the Midget, the Queen of the Blues, number 2 in '71. And then he had...
Well, you go into a studio and got an idea for a song, mate, and nobody else will do it for you. You do it yourself.
He had another number 2 in '75, Misty.
Misty. Play Misty for me. Oh, don't. Oh, that's a sinister film.
Anyway, following Ray Stevens, we have a name that conjures up all sorts of, unfortunately.
Okay.
No, it's Gary Glitter. He's back.
Oh, right.
With one I don't think I recognise, Always Yours.
Right. He sings it to his cellmate.
So I think we talked enough about Gary last year, so we will move on.
Indeed.
Next we have Charles Aznavour.
Charles Aznavour.
With She, number 4.
What is it? What is it about? You know, that thing that people just... I mean, when you actually look at the film now, they all look a little bit sleazy, don't they? But there was something that people sort of thought, you know, the French accent was so exotic, and so, you know, and these people had these musical careers, international musical careers, and you look at it now and you think, what did they see in him? What, you know?
It's one of those ones that's been covered by so many people. I think I remember in the very early 90s, there was a band called Vegas.
Oh, right.
Elvis Costello did a version for Notting Hill.
Oh, okay.
I mean, just so many people. Not even sure the Vegas version, which did get in the top 40 even, sort of it did well enough to... Vegas were this shows why I remember it particularly, because the album came out in just when I was at university. It's Terry Hall and Dave Stewart from the Eurythmics.
Oh, okay. You said Terry Hall there, and my mind immediately went to Lenny the Lion, and that can't be right.
She was their second single, although I'm not sure that maybe it wasn't a hit. I got number 43, their single Possessed, that's number 32. I'm probably the only person who even remembers them, because I just happened to be hanging around record shops a lot in the autumn of 92 when I was in my first term at university.
Okay, as you do. We're all seeking our musical identity at those sort of ages. Fair enough.
It was around the time that Dave Stewart's then wife Siobhan Fairey was having more success than he was with Shakespeare's sister.
Nananini Nunu.
Well, no, Shakespeare's sister at that point.
Right. People with careers that move around and have different jobs. Madness, I said. Madness.
That's another story. They split up and then came back together. So moving on from Charles Aznavour, we have George McRae with "Rock Your Baby" for 3 weeks.
Right. Okay. That actually rings no bells whatsoever, which is the first this year.
I don't know if it's "Rock Your Baby." I don't know if it's that one. Okay. In which case, I think there was another version of it in the 90s.
Oh, right. Okay.
But I don't know if it is that one. It just...
No, it does make sense. It does make sense. It feels like the right sort of era. I mean, now you mention it, and now you sing it, which, you know, it's quite the achievement. From those, I felt like I was on Name That Tune then. I suddenly knew exactly what song you were talking about then. I should have Tom O'Connored you. I'll get the old Dickie bow out and the velvet jacket. Wow. Name That Tune.
He had another number. He had a number 9 hit the same year, "I Can't Leave You Alone." And then in 75...
Number 9.
In 75, he had "It's Been So Long," and that was number 4. But those were his biggest hits in the UK.
Fair enough.
Following that, we have, whether it was An Old Wives' Tale, but I think for a while, the 3 Degrees were Prince Charles's favourite band. I don't know.
Oh, no, I believe so, yes. Yeah. Yes. In the sense that when Bunty Annual rings up and asks you those questions, what's your favourite band? What's your favourite colour? I suppose that the Palace had sort of stock answers that make you not look really square. Yes, I'm rather fond of grabs looking. The 3 Degrees, yes. If we'd picked it up another week, it would have been Motley Opal. You know, it's just one of those things.
When will I see you again?
When will I see you again? Yes. When will I gurn in my microphone? Yeah, there's a lot of... Yeah. It's very weird, actually. Again, it is... There's an incredible sexualization of the outfits that women were wearing on stage. There'd be a lot of skin-tight, glittery catsuits and things like that in those days. And it is fascinating now, because when you look at them and on shows like The Love Boat or something, it all looks massively cheesy, but at the time it was so normalized. This whole disco look, it's an incredible look and an incredible era, but it all now looks a little bit, ooh, dear me, no.
Diddy's very fond of the catsuit.
Ah, well, of course. Well, as long as it's not made of real cat. That's
no. Following the 3 Degrees for 2 weeks, we heard about them in 73 too. Mm-hmm. We've got the Osmonds with "Love Me for a Reason."
Okay,
I think, a nasty thing that Boyzone also did in the 90s.
Ooh, double yike. Yes, okay, double yike. Although the room has suddenly lit up at the mention of the Osmonds, because it's the light's reflecting off the teeth
Yeah, they were number one for 3 weeks. We're in August at this stage.
Okay.
And then following that, we have Carl Douglas, Kung Fu Fighting.
Are you in pain?
Yes, Carl Douglas. He had a follow-up called Dance the Kung Fu. So he had a bit of a theme going on.
How do you know that? He only got to number 35. Were you one of the few people?
I was very aware of it. I don't know. It probably got played on the shows I was watching on Saturday night. I keep telling you.
The bigger hit he had was in 77, Run Back, got to 25.
Oh, right, okay. There's something about Carl Douglas that makes me think of burger joints in the mid-70s in shows like The Rockford Files.
It was reissued in 98 and got to number 8, so been in the top 10 twice. Following Kung Fu Fighting, we have Annie's Song by John Denver.
Right.
That was only number 1 for 1 week.
Surprising.
I feel like that probably would have been quite popular on morning radio shows.
I suspect it might have had a few more weeks on the American chart, but yeah.
Then we have Sweet Sensation, Sad Sweet Dreamer. That was 1 week as well.
Sad Sweet Dreamer. It's just one of those things you put down to experience.
I don't think I know that one.
Like I say, this stuff was, I was like a sponge at that age, you know. I've never even been a huge, music fan of that, that era, but the stuff that was on, it sinks in.
The follow-up single, Purely by Coincidence, got to number 11 in the UK, and that was another hit. But,
wow.
Now the next song,
Stone Cold classic.
It is, but I wouldn't say this was the version that. It's a song that got to number 1 again in the 80s, but
it's got me all intrigued now. He's got me all intrigued. Go on.
It's Everything I Own by Ken Booth, which was number 1 for 3 weeks, but the original was by Bread, which is the version I much prefer. Because Ken Booth sort of turned it into a sort of reggae song, which the original wasn't. But it's interesting to note that when Boy George did it in the late 80s and had a number 1, he did it in that style. But I prefer, and I also think recently you may have seen, I've been posting quite a lot of Olivia Newton-John's early 70s stuff where she covered George Harrison and Bob Dylan. And I often like her versions of some of those songs more than the originals. And I think she did a version of Everything I Own, but I think she did it along the lines of the Bread version.
ONJ, 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 yes.
But yeah, so I do like that song, but it's not my favourite version of it. I just like the Bread version. Then we have got 3 more number 1s. We have, actually I should see whether Ken Booth had any other hits. He's still alive to this day. He's 73.
Crikey.
Still performing.
I always feel that these people should be at least 30 years older than me, and I'm always slightly disappointed also when they pop off, and I think, well, they don't sound very old, and they're not that much older than I am. But it always, you forget how young people are when they are pop stars. Sometimes they're 19 and you're 12, so there's only about 7-8 years apart, really, in terms of that, and it does come as a surprise.
He did have another hit in 74. Which reached number 11. Ouch. Right. So I'm really trying to disembark and it's knocking my earphones off. Yeah, he had a number 11 hit.
Attention to me! Attention to me!
That's a Nolan song. I like that. That's a good Nolan song, actually. His other hit in 74 was Crying Over You, which got to number 11. A little bit like Sweet Sensation with their follow-up, got to number 11. So we have
it's just two ones together rather than just one. It's a perfectly sensible binary progression. Probably.
It's probably Roman numerals.
Or something. Yes, that's it. Yes.
We've got 3 number 1s left in 74.
Okay.
We've got David Essex, Gonna Make You a Star for 3 weeks.
Make you a star, we gonna make you. Yeah, David Essex. He was one of the triad of him and the Glitter and Alvin Stardust that me and my mates did Out of My Looking music special when we had that music project. He was the third of the triad. One of my mates cut up the Alvin Stardust stuff. One of my mates cut up the David Essex stuff, and I cut up the Gary Glitter stuff. So there you go. I got the short straw, I feel.
He had plenty of other hits, and also a fair few misses. But he did have a long career, and he did have
that Rock On, didn't it? Rock On, which I think is actually, it's got a real nice sound to it. It's a bit sort of, I like that.
And he had another number one in 75.
Mm-hmm.
No, I better not say, because just in case the listeners haven't listened to that episode yet, and are intending to jump back to listen to it.
Absolutely. Well, you are going to put them all out again in order, aren't you, at some point?
Of course.
The Paul's guide to how to follow the music from 1960 to present day.
I do have the number of the episode where we did 75 to tell the listeners at the end of the show, so they can find it if they want to go in chronological order. They'll have to work out themselves if they want to find 76. But anyway, so our penultimate number one of 1974 is "You're the First, the Last, My Everything" by Barry White.
There you go, Barry White. We'll turn down all the microphones and get on down and talk about love. Yeah, excellent. The Walrus of Love, I believe Terry Wogan used to refer to it.
You've got "Can't Get Enough of Your Love, Babe," also in 74.
I never saw the appeal of Barry White, but obviously he definitely did it for some folk.
Then he also had in 75, "What Am I Going to Do With You?" number 5, "Let the Music Play" number 9, "You See the Trouble with Me" number 2, and that was sort of it for top 10 hits. But he was even having he had a number 14 hit in 1987 with "Show You Right."
The problem is if you play his records at full blast, you do serious structural damage to your house. The bass line is very down there. There's a lot of vibration. You've got to be very careful. Should come with a health warning or at least a structural warning.
He had a top 20 hit in 94, or in the UK as well, not just overseas.
That wasn't posthumous. He was around a lot longer than 94, wasn't he?
He died in 2003, age 58.
Yeah, I didn't think it was that old, but I didn't think it was as early as 94. So it wasn't one of those people buying because you popped off things. It was genuine career resurgence. Quite often because there's some soundtrack with you on. But yes, interesting.
And our final number one of 74,
the Christmas number one.
Yeah, and I nearly gave it away earlier in the episode. It is Mud with "Lonely This Christmas."
It'll be lonely this Christmas. Yes, brilliant.
Of course.
And of course, we missed Christmas by the time this episode goes out, so we're not going to go the whole long on it. Without you by my side. No, we're not going to do all that. In the pop style.
What is it? Sorry, is it a cover though? Is it? It's just. Is it, or is it a? Because it says it's written by Mike Chapman and Nicky Chin. I think it's just because.
We're not going to cover it, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, no. I just thought it was a cover, but I think it's just because it's done in the style of of Elvis Presley.
Yeah,
that is actually a sort of a new, and also it's such an old song now anyway. Yeah, I think it was actually an original song at the time, just in the start of the 50s style.
In the 50s style, in the club style, in the Elvis style. Yes, we'll do them all. We'll do it in the Ick style later. Oh dear, oh Paul.
So that's 74. We ought to look. We'll look at the albums. We'll look quickly at what other.
So we've closed the loop in Britain. There we go. The loop is closed.
Just going to look and see what other big hits there were. What else we've got? We've got Radar Love.
I've been in Endeavour. Sorry, go on.
We've got Radar Love by Golden Earring, number 7.
You've got a thing that's called a Radar Love.
Yes. Got Teenage Rampage by Sweet, number 2.
Recognise your age. It's a teenage rampage. Turn another page. Yes.
Roy Wood solo doing Forever, number 8.
All right. Okay, I don't know that one.
Andy Williams' Solitaire.
Oh dear, my mother bought that. I think again it's another one of those albums that's possibly still on my shelf from my mother's collection. And Solitaire is the only game in town, and every road that takes me down.
The Carpenters version is the one I like of Solitaire.
Who?
I think Nick and I were talking about it on a relatively recent episode. But I don't know if it's the Andy Williams version he prefers, but I really like
Polo Necks. That's what I remember. Lots of Polo Necks.
Got Lulu's version of The Man Who Sold the World.
Man Who Sold the World by Lulu. That's I mean, of course, this is peak Lulu, isn't it? Because 74 would have been the Man with the Golden Gun, wouldn't it?
She's my favourite Bond song, which but never charted as a single. It's also around the time where she was doing... Well,
Who will he bang? We shall see.
Which around the time that David Bowie was producing her albums and stuff, or at least some of her tracks. What else we got? All of My Life by Diana Ross, number 9. Wombling Song by the Wombles, number 4.
That's one of your favourites, isn't it? One of your albums.
We have Rebel Rebel by David Bowie, number 5.
Fair enough.
The Air That I Breathe by the Hollies, number 2.
Sometimes I can make a word last for 5 minutes.
That's another one that Olivia Newton-John did a great cover version of. You're 16 by Ringo Starr, number 4.
Old Ringo. Although, again, sometimes when you analyse the lyrics, you think, ooh, what? Anyway, there we go.
The Most Beautiful Girl by Charlie Rich, number 2.
Ditto.
Jet by Paul McCartney, Wings, number 7.
Jet. That one.
It's one that would fit Ick, but I don't know if he'll remember. Picking up a hit for Ick, but I only know him as a comedian. But Freddie Starr had a number 9 hit in 74 with It's You. I don't know how many songs he released. But
I suppose it was part of his act. He did do singing, didn't he? Not a great Freddie Starr fan, to be fair.
Then we have Emma by Hot Chocolate, number 3. I don't really recognise that one, but
it's not the one that goes Emily. Not that one. No, it'd be Emily, wouldn't it?
Every Day by Slade, number 3. Because I haven't heard much from Slade in 74.
No, considering how big they were in the previous year. But then again, I suppose they're just counting all their Christmas money again, aren't they?
They did release that Greatest Hits towards the end of 73.
These mirrors for the ads don't pay for themselves.
Seven Seas of Rye by Queen, number 10.
Is that their first hit? Because it's funny, actually, because I was kind of half expecting Bo Rap to turn up. But it's 75 Bo Rap, isn't it?
Is their first hit. And Killer Queen also comes out. 2 top 10 hits in 74. What else have we got? We have Remember Your Womble, number 3.
We're getting into peak Womble mania, aren't we?
I wasn't alive. Well, I was alive, but I wasn't there. I wasn't there. I know. I was a late. Yes.
Late adopter.
Yeah, the one.
Wombling Fever.
I had a Christmas compilation album, which is probably later in the 70s, which I absolutely adored.
I suspect that it was bought to you because you were dancing around the room to remember you were a Womble when you're at an age when you can't remember doing it.
Still do it today.
You've put in the years. You're going to bloody well do it. Yeah,
fall over Dealey's catnip mice. What else have we got? Wizard, Rock and Roll Winter, 6. Don't Stay Away Too Long, Peters and Lee, number 3.
Wow.
We got here we come, Shang-a-Lang by the Bay City Rollers.
Oh, the BCRs. Yes, and the people smashing the windows at Bellevue. Yes. Oh dear, was that the Osmonds? I can never remember now. They're the same sign that's kind of screaming and sudden interest in tartan. Yeah, very weird. Very weird times.
Number 2, This Town Ain't Big Enough for the Both of Us by Sparks.
And making me who's going to leave.
We really need Ick to do that one.
Yeah.
We have Judy T by Steve Harley and the Cockney Rebel, number 5.
Oh, right. Okay.
Quite interested in Cockney Rebel, and I think I have most of their albums. Yes, Deals, I do. They are pretty good, Deals. They are better than you'd think.
Not a cry of protest. Actually, that's the Paper Lace fan club speaking.
Yeah, no, Cockney Rebel better than Paper Lace, Deals, believe me. It's one of those things where Steve Harley's voice isn't the greatest, but he's sort of surrounded by backing singers, and suddenly...
Well, I think, again, that sort of is ahead of its time, because to a certain extent, that was, when punk came in, the singers weren't necessarily the best, but the energy and the passion, if you like, sort of swept all that aside. The actual sort of technical mastery. There's a lot to be said for that.
We have his name came up in our last Chatterbox episode. We have One Man Band by Leo Sayer, number 6.
Yo, Leo in his little clown suit and his little curly hair. He just stands there looking like a microphone for some reason. I don't know. There you go. So moving on.
Kissing in the Back Row of the Movies by the Drifters.
It's in the back row of the movie. That was that thing where they would all wear suits and move simultaneously. It was actually quite incredible. But yeah, wow.
Oh, we've got another Slade one here. The Banging Man, number 3.
The Banging Man.
Yep, number 3.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't think of that. There you go. You'll be able to send me that one, and I'll go. Oh, it's that one. Right.
Well, I did that with "Please Me, Squeeze Me," and although I like the lyrics, the song was pretty. That wasn't as exciting as I was hoping.
Not your favourite. Yes.
We have Band on the Run got to number 3. The Wall Street Shuffle by 10cc.
Wall Street Shuffle.
Another good one. Didn't know this one got in the top 10. We got Banana Rock by the Wombles.
Right. You see, it's in my mind. It's already mingling with Holiday Rock from Heidi.
Go
the bar.
Bit like that, yeah. I Shot the Sheriff by Eric Clapton, number 9.
But I didn't shoot the deputy. Now, I feel that Clapton's star is rather in the descendant at the moment in terms of some of the things he says. But I kind of feel that basically admitting to shooting the sheriff basically is still going to get you strung up. So it doesn't matter that you didn't shoot the deputy.
That's the Bob Marley cover. What else we got? We got to get on the albums deal, haven't we? Knock on Wood by David Bowie, number 10.
Right. Is that the same? Yeah, the same as the Tina. Not is it Tina Turner?
No. Yeah. There's various people. Of course, there's Amy Stewart in the late 70s. The disco.
Right. Okay. That's probably the one I'm thinking of. I thought Tina Turner did it. There you go. Never mind.
Sure, a lot of people. It was written by Eddie Floyd and Steve Cropper.
Okay.
Performed by
Steve
Floyd.
Cropper of the Blues Brothers. Steve Cropper, I suppose it would be.
What else have we got? There's too much. No, Honestly, Lindsay DePaul, number 7.
Right. And the sitcom is Born. Yes.
What else?
Did you also do Yes, Honestly, or was that somebody else? Or was Yes, Honestly the sitcom? It's all getting all these honestlies are messing with me.
I do have the Pauline Collins series. That's the series, isn't it?
I think so.
Pauline Collins and her husband.
John Alderton. Yes.
Elvis Presley has a top 5 hit. I haven't heard from him for a while. My Boy, which I don't remember.
It was probably too busy making Irene Handel swoon.
Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, the Elton John version, number 10. And actually, probably their biggest, we'll finish with this. I remember this a lot as a kid. Streets of London by Ralph McTell, number 2.
Yes.
I think he also did a kids' TV program in either the 70s or early 80s. So that's why I was sort of aware of him. And also Roger Whittaker used to cover the Streets of London.
Never change my mind.
But I think possibly their biggest hit, we'll finish this before we go to the albums.
Okay.
We have Wombling Merry Christmas by the Wombles, number 2.
We wish you a wombling Merry Christmas. No, I don't remember it at all. Never heard it. No.
Well, we'll go over to the albums very quick. Oops, wrong thing. Top 10. So
number 1 albums in the UK of 74 are Tales from Topographic Oceans by Yes. Then there's that Sladist by Slade, Greatest Hits. And I Love You So by Perry Como. Then the Carpenters singles 1969 to 73. Actually, that comes back 4 times. So the first 4 weeks. Then we have Slade, Old, New, Borrowed and Blue. Then we have Carpenters singles again for 11 weeks. Then we have Rick Wakeman, Journey to the Centre of the Earth. Then we have the Carpenters again for another week. Then we have Diamond Dogs by Barry for 4 weeks. And then we have the Carpenters again for 1 more week.
Blimey, Charlie.
They're the hit. I think they must be the biggest seller.
That's it. That's the number 1 albums of the entire year. Crikey.
But no, there is more. But I would imagine that the Carpenters must have won that race. So then we have Caribou by Elton John.
Okay.
Band on the Run by Paul McCartney and Wings. Hergest Ridge by Mike Oldfield, and then Tubular Bells by Mike Oldfield. I have a feeling that Hergest Ridge was probably the new album, but that probably reminded people to go and buy Tubular Bells again. So
possibly.
That came out in 73. Then we have
Exorcist, wasn't it, in 73? So makes sense.
Then we have Rollin' by Bay City Rollers, Smiler by Rod Stewart.
Right, oh dear.
Rollin' by Bay City Rollers again. Smiler by Rod Stewart again. Then Rollin' again by Bay City. These were like week for week, really.
War of the Scots.
Yeah, they weren't the number 1 for very long, but they were about 3 times. And then the final album of the year, for 11 weeks, so a big one, but the Carpenters still top it, is Elton John's Greatest Hits.
Oh, okay. Good. Did you have the Greatest Hits out then? That is surprising.
Yeah, only spanned 70 to 74, but and it only had 10 tracks.
Yeah, I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? When you think about it, it's I mean, when you think about the LP of Queen's Greatest Hits, the first one it's a single album. It's not a double album or anything like that. So I suppose it makes sense.
I'm just trying to see if there's any big albums. Yeah, I mean, top 10 albums. Brian Ferry's doing solo stuff as well as doing Roxy Music. All the bands we've talked about really have got albums, whether they're Walls and Bridges by John Lennon, The The Who, Rolling Stones, It's Only Rock and Roll. So,
right, okay.
Really their most famous one.
No.
Sheer Heart Attack by Queen. That nearly made number one. A couple of Sparks albums, which I recognise.
I always think the strange thing about Sheer Heart Attack is it doesn't have Sheer Heart Attack on it. That doesn't actually turn up until News of the World a couple of years later.
I wonder if the reason that Slade were a bit quiet is that I noticed right at the end of the year the soundtrack for Slade in Flame. So maybe they were making the film, which I'd never seen, of Slade.
No, it's possible. I also didn't they? I can't remember what point in their career did one of their members get ill, because one of their members got ill. Wasn't there? Were they involved in some sort of crash or something?
We did mention something like that in.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So I could say I should listen to ourselves more.
Right, we need to go over to America. We're running out
Absolutely.
of time.
One last time.
I would say that the songs are pretty different from the UK, although some similar. We have, I think this is carried on from 73. We have Time in a Bottle by Jim Crockey, or we didn't ever work out how to pronounce it. Okay. Then we have The Joker by Steve Miller Band.
Okay.
These are just most of these are just 1 week. Then we have Show and Tell by Al Wilson.
Okay. This is the number ones of the year, or the
number ones. Yeah. Doesn't seem to have been.
It really was a very different world over there, wasn't it, at that time?
Then we have You're 16 by Ringo Starr, which I think they really embraced the solo Beatles more than they did, because that didn't get to number one. Did top 10.
Well, I'm trying to think how was it. Well, half the Beatles ended up living in America, didn't they? Yeah. And half of them didn't. I think if you feel loved somewhere, you go there, don't you?
Then we have The Way We Were by Barbra Streisand.
God, that takes me back to the cruise ships. This is making me think of the Poseidon Adventure. I don't know why. It's got nothing to do with the Poseidon Adventure at all, but it's that kind of image.
When I was editing the 73, I was shouting at myself because we mentioned a song called The Morning After, the Morning After by Maureen somebody or other. And I think that's the song that the singer is singing on the Poseidon Adventure.
Yes. Well, we've managed to segue in now, and if you do a sneaky edit, you can drop it in.
The Way We Were only got to number 31 in the UK.
Okay.
Then we've got Love's Theme by Love Unlimited Orchestra.
Okay.
Which got to number 10 in the UK.
Okay. Is this the Billboard chart?
This is the Billboard Hot 100 number ones of 74. Yeah.
Just that it's like, for some reason, they don't seem to have. I say very little correlation, which feels unusual.
We do tally up now because we've got Seasons in the Sun by Terry Jacks for 3 weeks. But then we've got Dark Lady by Cher, which I doubt did that well in the UK because a lot of her early 70s songs got to 36 in the UK. I know she was having hits in America, but not so much.
Well, she was born in the wagon of a travelling show.
That was one of the few of the 70s that was a hit. We have another John Denver. Sunshine on My Shoulders for one. It
feels culturally, it's like there's been a lot of diversity. It's kind of like these are all very homegrown acts, and the British one was very homegrown acts as well. And it's just like there's not been as much cross-pollination in 74. At least it doesn't feel that way.
Sunshine on My Shoulders wasn't a hit in the UK. It doesn't seem to have been released as a single.
Then we have Hooked on a Feeling, which covered by loads of people, but don't think this is a version by Blue Suede. Doesn't seem to have been released in the UK. Seems to be.
I just feel that somehow if you actually bought yourself a CD of the top hits of 1974, you might think, I've not heard of any of these.
The next one you will have heard of, but it did better in the States again than it did in the UK. Benny and the Jets by Elton John.
Benny and the Jets. But then again, that was on Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, which I do possess, so I suppose that's familiar from that.
Being released as a single. It was released as a single in 76, but only got to 37.
Okay.
It's been released as one of the singles from that album. So then we have The Sound of Philadelphia by 3 Degrees and MFSB for 2 weeks. For 2 weeks, The Locomotion by Grand Funk.
Okay. Which version is that? Is that I don't know, because obviously The Locomotion's been done by lots of people, including the Kylie. But
I think it is that song.
I just wonder if it was, again, more of a, a different sort of...
I imagine it was funky, but it wasn't released as a single in the UK.
No. Okay.
Then for 3 weeks we have The Streak by Ray Stevens. We do agree.
So actually, well, no, did we say he was American? Did we say that? Because it wasn't. I mean, it didn't do as well over here as it did over there, and that does surprise me actually.
Well, no, that was the number one over here.
Yeah, but only for the 1 week. That just surprised me. That's all. Especially a novelty song. But I'm trying to think, was streaking a big thing in America as well? You'll have to ask your American correspondent.
Then we have Band on the Run by Paul McCartney and Wings. That did better over there. Billy Don't Be a Hero, but not by Paper Lace, by Bo Donaldson and the Haywoods.
Oh, okay.
It was a hit. That's weird because it says that it was a hit for Paper Lace first, and then they did the US version. So so that at least that clears that up.
It's just odd. Is it something to do with it? It was too British an interpretation of it or something?
Then we have Sundown by Gordon Lightfoot.
Okay.
Which got to 33 in the UK. Then Rock the Boat by the Hughes Corporation.
Don't kick the boat over. Rock the boat, don't rock the boat.
Got to number 6 in the UK.
Okay.
Then, 2 in a row. Then we have Rock Your Baby by George McRae. I think that was another
Rock
number
Your
one.
Boats, Rock Your Baby.
Yeah. And then we have Annie's Song by John Denver. Then, not a Roberta Flack song I recognise, Feel Like Making Love, although I feel like I know other songs with that title, but got to 34 in the UK.
Is that the Move Closer, Move Your Body Real Closer, Feel Like We're Really... Is that the one?
It might be, but it's
okay.
What was that called? Move Closer. Well, it didn't. It wasn't hit in the UK, which I feel it would. Because it's well known, I feel that might be a different song. The Night Chicago Died by Paper Lace. Well, that's weird. So they didn't like Billy Don't Be a Hero by Paper Lace, but they didn't mind The Night Chicago Died.
It's this cultural thing, you see. One's about death and one's about Chicago.
Then You're Having My Baby by Paul Anka and Odla Coates.
Okay. That was probably the sort of thing that would make me throw the radio across the room. Yeah.
Number 6 in the UK. Then, gosh, they do have a lot of number ones, and because they're all only like 1 week, most of them, or 2. Then we have I Shot the Sheriff by Eric Clapton. Can't Get Enough of Your Love, Babe by Barry White. And then the third rock this year, Rock Me Gently by Andy Kim.
Okay. Rock Me Baby in the Rock Me Boat, Rock Me...
this is the connection. I recognise that name, which I wouldn't have done like a few months ago. Andy Kim co-wrote Sugar Sugar by the Archies, and it might even have been one of the Archies. Because I when I was looking into the Archies, I came across his name. And another name we've mentioned in this episode, although not directly like an actual song, but
go on.
Next number one is I Honestly Love You by Olivia Newton-John.
ONJ!
Only got to number 22 over in the UK. But then we have Nothing from Nothing by Billy Preston.
Which always sounds like a Coronation Street character to me. I don't
Billy
know.
Preston was the keyboardist on Get Back.
Right.
And of course, I'm watching the Get Back documentary on Disney Plus at the moment. For those of you who don't know what Get Back is, it's a Beatles song. And they needed a lot of the songs around that time. They needed a keyboardist, but they were finding it difficult to they were trying to do no overdubs so they could do stuff live. And if it was in the studio, that they could do their own piano. They got him in. He was somebody they'd known from early on in their career when they were over in Hamburg. Then we've got Then Came You by Dionne Warwick and the Spinners.
Okay.
Don't really know much Dionne Warwick except for Heartbreaker in the 80s. We did get to number 29. Then we have You Haven't Done Nothing by Stevie Wonder, which is not one that I know doesn't seem to be released as a single in. No, it got to number 30 in the UK.
Right.
Then we have You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet by Batman Turner Overdrive.
Okay. Smash You and Nicey.
I did get to number 2 actually though I'm not sure that didn't get to number 2 in 75 in the UK. But
Excellent.
Yeah. Then we have Whatever Gets You Through the Night by John Lennon, which got to number 36 in the UK.
Okay.
They definitely do like their Beatles more than we do. Then I Can Help by Billy Swan. Don't know. I think it's a country crossover hit.
I've got 2 strong arms, I can help.
Might be, yeah. It got to number 6 in the UK, so probably is that one. Kung Fu Fighting for 2 weeks in December. Cats in the Cradle. Cats in the Cradle by Harry Chapin.
Oh, isn't that the thing they keep playing on whenever there's a Manson? Sorry. Oh, is that the one about parents and dads and it makes people weep and all that stuff? Yeah.
I know the Ugly Kid Joe version from 1992, which got to number 7. I don't think it was a single in the UK back in the actual day.
Just feels like it's always on soundtracks for things like Zodiac or something, you know. It's seems to be. I associate it now with serial killers. I don't know why, but there we go.
The last number 1
Is this of our entire run? Is this the last song we're going to talk about?
Not quite. Well, maybe, probably. It's the last number 1 in America we're going to talk about. It's Angie Baby by Helen Reddy, which did get to number 5 in the UK. It's not one I could sing to you right now.
No, the title sounds familiar, and that was the Christmas number 1 for.
Yeah, they haven't got Lonely at Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everybody. As covered by Bachman Turner Overdrive.
Now I will rush. I won't look at any other sort of top 10 singles or anything, but I will go through the big albums in '74 in the US. We starting with the Carpenters, and then that Jim Crockey. You don't mess around, Jim.
Don't mess around. Right.
Then for 4 weeks, Planet Waves by Bob Dylan with the band. Now, it's not a Bob Dylan. I mean, I probably said it before. I'm not a big Bob Dylan fan, but I was always the sort of person that if I got my copy of Q magazine, I would read the articles all the way through. So I'd find out all about bands that I didn't really, I didn't really care about. I've never heard of Planet Waves.
No.
Apparently, I was looking into it before we started, and it was actually at the time one of his more successful albums. He'd had a couple of albums that hadn't been very popular. But you know how you sort of, I see album covers and I might not even know the music, but I recognise the album cover. I didn't recognise the album cover of this either. Then we have The Way We Were by Barbra Streisand for 2 weeks. John Denver's Greatest Hits for 2 weeks. Band on the Run by Wings for 1 week. Greatest Hits, John Denver comes back again. Chicago 7 by Chicago. Sting, the soundtrack of that.
The Sting. Yes.
For 5 weeks.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just giving you time to get you.
Then we have Wings again for 2 weeks.
Okay.
Band on the Run. Then we have Sundown by Gordon Lightfoot for 2 weeks. Then we have Band on the Run again. Then for 4 weeks we have Caribou by Elton John.
Yeah.
Then we have Back Home Again by John Denver, presumably his new album of the greatest hits. Then we have for 4 weeks 461 Ocean Boulevard by Eric Clapton.
Mm-hmm.
I've not really heard of that album, but I do vaguely feel I recognise the album cover, although it does look a bit like the pictures you see when you see Hotel California mentions.
Okay.
I've not heard of this one. Stevie Wonder, Fulfillingness is finale. Fulfillingness is first finale.
Wow. It's a good job you didn't write that in one of your poems.
Yeah. Then we have Bad Company by Bad Company.
Uh-huh.
Well, that's on that Swan Song label. They must have been signed by Led Zeppelin. Then we have Endless Summer by the Beach Boys, which I think I was going to say. Oh yes, it is a compilation album. I used to have that much later on.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first thing I ever owned of the Beach Boys was Endless Summer. So it covers 62 to 65.
Okay.
If You Love Me, Let Me Know by Olivia Newton-John.
Mm-hmm.
Not Fragile by Bachman Turner Overdrive.
Wow.
Can't Get Enough by Barry White. These are all for 1 week. So Far by Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young.
So a bit of an eclectic year, you might say.
Then Wrap Around Joy by Carole King, which is not an album I really...
No.
I mean, I only really know Tapestry, and I don't really know that well. But, then there's Walls and Bridges by John Lennon.
Mm-hmm.
Only Rock and Roll by Rolling Stones.
Mm-hmm.
And then for the last 5 weeks is Elton John's greatest hits again.
Fair enough. Again, very popular over there in many ways.
Yeah.
How strange.
Well, I think that's it for 74.
Wow. We've done it.
We have
made it.
When we come back, Martin and I are probably going to be talking about the basically going right back to the start of the charts. We may do it like we did the early 60s and do 2 years in a row.
We'll roll out the old pianola.
I mean, I can tell you for a fact that the first year of the charts, for some reason they started the charts in about, I think it's 52, but they started in about the end of November. So
that'll be a short one.
Yeah. So I think we might even do 3 years.
We may have to annex that one.
Yeah. Just in case you are listening to this in order, I still want to
point the listener in the direction.
I want to point you in the right direction, but I also want to whet your appetite for what's coming in 75. Even though even if you've listened in order to our episodes, you'll know. But in case you're listening in chronological order of the music episodes, you won't know. So big hits coming in 75 are from Status Quo, The Times, Pilot, Steve Harley and Cockney Rebel, Telly Savalas, Bay City Rollers, Mud, Tammy Wynette, Windsor Davis and Don Estelle, 10cc, Johnny Nash, Typically Tropical, The Stylistics, Rod Stewart, David Essex, Art Garfunkel, David Bowie, Billy Connolly and Queen, and at least one of those has more than one number one.
You see, why didn't you give me that year to talk about? So much material.
But if you want to go immediately onto our already released episode about 1975, I can tell you it is episode 380, which was released in October 2020, and it's called "Showing Off the Big Hits of 1975." And that's with Nick and I, not with Mr. Hope.
It's by replacement, although it's kind of weird, isn't it?
Yeah, you replaced him. But
it's kind of timey-wimey, replacementy, wastementy. It's all terribly complicated.
Oh dear. But
I'm not bitter. Well,
we are going to give Martin the chance to kind of talk about later 70s music. After we've done the 50s, I want to talk about groups and maybe, sort of pick 2 or 3 groups. So yes, we might get to talk about the later 70s with each other then, but in a slightly different way. But anyway, Martin, thank you very much.
Always a pleasure.
I'll see you again in about 1952 or something.
Indeed, we'll get the old timey-wimey. You take care, bye-bye.
Yeah. Okay, bye for now. Bye.
Well, Paul, the pressure is off this year. What? For Eek, the pressure is off. Is it? Why? Well, it's 1974. It's not 1973. 1973 was a big year, obviously, for you because that's the year you were born. 1974, less important. I wouldn't say so. Ick, I have a lot of friends because a lot of my friends from school, the same school year as me were born in 74. Harry, for one. But 74 was a very important year. It's the first full year that I was about. Not that it's about me. No, not about you, Paul. Well, I'm sorry, I did not mean to offend. You didn't offend, Cromitty, it's fine. I believe that Ick is also doing songs that were not number one, but were, the kind of suit his voice. The kind of suit his voice, yes, that's right. There's a lot of banging going on in the other room. What's going on? I don't know, I think that's Ick preparing. What is he doing? Building a stage? Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, it's very exciting. It's very exciting. I look forward to this. It's the part of the episode. I think that everybody is it's all very well. Martin and I talking, but I think Martin would agree that we are all waiting for this moment just to see the songs that it plucks from obscurity. Yes, who remembers any songs from 1974 now? Well, yeah, only us old folk. Yeah, yes. Well, still, it reminds people of songs they've forgotten. Yes. I'm sure people have forgotten a lot of songs from that time. Nearly 50 years ago now. Don't say that. I'm clinging on to my 40s at the moment. Oh dear, Paul. Yes. Well, it happens to us all. You're no longer the young buck. The young buck. I'm still the youngest in my group of friends. Well, yeah, pretty much. My sci-fi friends. I'm still the youngest. I'm still the baby. Yes, Paul. You kid yourself of that. Keep going. Oh, Cromitty. I can hear the theme music coming. When we come back, it could be singing those songs. Oh, yes. Do you need a listening trumpet, Paul? Because you're so old. Cromitty, you're older than I am. Well, I'm not saying my age. I keep it to myself. Yes, well, I think you're about 190 or something. Not quite, but very close. I knew it. I gotta go now.
I don't care.
Bye.
I want to go with you.
Gotta go. Bye.
Goodbye.
This show is part of the Pride 48 network. Find more shows over at pride48.com.
Oh dear, what's going on now? Oh, it's the Shy Life Podcast. Let's go.
I have a voice. I have a voice.
You have a voice.
You have a voice. We have a voice.
We have a voice.
Unique voices in podcasting.
UnivazPods.net.
Hello, listeners, it's me, Ick the Alien. I'm going to sing you some songs from 1974. Some were number one, and some were just big in the charts. But sadly did not reach the number one spot. Here we go. It's the New Seekers first. You won't find another fool like me, maybe. No, you won't. Do, 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 do. Yes. That's right, we really love those tiger feet. That's neat. I really love those tiger feet. Do, the tiger feet, do. Down from Devilgate, down on Devilgate Drive. Billy to be a hero. Do. We had joy, we had fun, we had seasons in the sun. La 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 la, la 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 la. Woo woo woo, do do do, la 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 la. Do 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 do. What do? My Waterloo, Waterloo, baby, my Waterloo. Sugar baby love, sugar. She like a la 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 la, a la 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 la, a la 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 la. She la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la. She fuck you baby, I'm the oh yeah. When will I see you again? Da 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 da. Oh, when will I see precious moments? Oh, la 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 la. Love me for a reason. Let the reason be love. Oh, everybody's on kung fu fighting. Do 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 do. And everybody's on fighting. Dip it up, dip it up, dip. And a little bit frightening. Ba 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 ba. All of it, dip it, do ba ba boom. Dip it up, dip it up, dip it up. Oh ho ho ho. Oh ho ho ho. Yes, you fill up my senses. Ba 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 ba. Oh do 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 do. Come fill me again. Dear oh dear. Everything I owe you do. Oh dear. I've got stage fright. Everything I owe. Do. I have to come back to it. You're first, my last, my everything. Oh no, I can't remember the tune of that one. Oh golly, it's all going to pot.
Keep on going, Hick. Keep on going.
I'm sorry, Paul. I'm lonely this Christmas without you to hold. I, lonely this Christmas. Oh, dearie me.
Oh dear, Hick, what's wrong?
Oh, I've got stage fright.
Stage fright?
Yes. Oh gosh, so many songs in my head. I've forgotten them. Oh.
Set me free. Set me free. The minus years I ever known. Do.
Oh, I remember it now. I would do everything I own. Give up my heart, my soul, my home. I would do everything I own just to be with you again.
Yeah, that's the bread version. That's not the version that was number one, but that's still my favourite, as I say.
Oh, sorry, Paul. Thank you. You helped me.
That's good. Right, just a few more songs, I think, and then we ought to finish.
Oh, yes, Paul, sorry. Oh, golly, sorry, listeners. What else can I share with you? Solitaire's the only game in town, and everyone won't regret him now. Oh dear, the man who sold the world, the man who it wah 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 wah, but wah 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 wah, wah 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 wah, wah 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 wah, wah wah wah. Oh no, not me. I never lost control. I'm face to face with the man who sold the world. Wah 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 wah. rumbling Merry Christmas. All day long we will be rumbling in the snow. We wish you a rumbling Merry Christmas. Oh, I can't do that bit. Oh, thank you, Paul. We wish you a rumbling Merry Christmas.
Sometimes, boom, boom, all I need is the air that I breathe just to love you.
Oh, yes, Paul, go on.
All I need is the air that I breathe.
Oh, that's got a good guitar bit as well, hasn't it?
It jolly well has, but never mind. All right, Jet.
Ooh, Jet. Boo, 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 boo.
And Jet, yours was the only jet on the moon. I can't remember the words.
Jet.
Oh dear.
I get a little sentimental over you.
You certainly do.
This town ain't big enough for the both of us.
Now you're talking.
Do-do-do-do. And you take me who's gonna live. Do-do-do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do-do-do.
I think the show is finished now. Oh, has it? Oh, so many more songs we could have sung.
Too good to be forgotten. La 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 la. Too good to be forgotten. La 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 la.
You'll never be forgotten, Nick. You'll never be forgotten.
Ew! What's that smell?
Okay, let's just shut this one out. Get her going.
Wow, that was a good episode. Hey, you want to know something? Really? Paul? The Shy Yeti? He's really quite a musicologist. No, really.
500. What's your favourite colour?
I've got quite interested in Cockney Rebel, and I think I have most of their albums. Yes, Deals, I do. They're pretty good. They are pretty good, Deals. They are better than you'd think.